Hello, everyone. I'm Ashanti Golar, the founder of the Brown Girls Guide to Politics, and we are very excited about this special Women's History Month edition of ELLE's 20 Questions, where we're going to be talking to some of the freshman women of color in Congress. And today we are joined by the Trailblazer Representative Teresa Fernandez from New Mexico's 3rd District. I'm so excited for you all to hear from her. We've been just chatting before we came live, and she is so fabulous. So, Congresswoman, how are you today?
I am doing incredibly well. I am looking out at snow-capped mountains from Santa Fe, Nuevo Mexico, and we love it when the snow falls here because not only do we play in it, but it means water in the summer. So we love every little drop of moisture we get.
I love it. So first, one of the things that we were talking about is New Mexico, the 1st district, the 2nd district, the 3rd district is represented by women of color. And this is a first to happen. I was so excited when it happened. So for you, what is it like being a part of history? We know that this is something that's going to be in the books, but you're currently living it. So tell us a little bit about that.
It is absolutely marvelous because we recognize that this is our future, right? The very first Latina to ever run for Congress was a suffragist from New Mexico who, after getting New Mexico to talk them into voting for the 19th Amendment, she ran for Congress. She didn't win, but 100 years later, I'm the first Latina to represent this district in an all-woman color delegation. And Deb Haaland will soon be the first Native American to head the Department of Interior. But listen, there's only 10 Latinas in Congress right now. And oftentimes I'm the only Latina in the room. And I bring my perspective to the questions at hand. And sometimes it's as simple as we're sending a letter to the Biden then transition team. And I say, oh, but we haven't mentioned tal y tal y tal. I'll list 3 issues that are close to my lived experience. My colleagues, my other women-led congresswomen, they're like, of course, let's put that in. They welcome that, but that might not be their reflexive action because they don't know it directly. Whereas I think when you're from the community and you've lived the issues of the community, it's reflexive for you. It's like, ooh, we need to get this in, we need to address this. And those are the key things, to be able to be that voice in that room at all times. And that's one of the beauties of, having me serve my community in Congress.
I love what you said because it's so true. When you have those lived experiences, you know the questions to ask, you know the work that needs to be done. And I love that New Mexico has 3 of you all having a seat at the table. And of course, we're going to talk more about Deb Haaland, who I love. I mean, I'm also the president of Emerge, and she's an Emerge alum. So definitely going to have some questions about soon to be Interior Secretary Haaland. But I do want to talk about the first 100 days. You're nearing pretty much the end of your first 100 days. It's right around the corner. But we can't talk about the first 100 days without talking about January 6th. And that day, that will also unfortunately go down in the history books. I was thinking about everyone there, but especially the women, like the women of color, because it was very obvious who they really wanted to attack and hurt. So how are you doing after that? And what are some ways that we can continue to support you and the other women in Congress after that horrible day?
You're absolutely right. We know that white supremacy was at the core of the rioters and the insurrectionists. And we know that, in my Congressional Hispanic Caucus, that there have been some of our members who immediately after on the flights home were really attacked for who they were. They were easily identified. And I think that, part of the hard thing that we all struggle with from that day is the fact that it was an attack on our democracy, on this thing that we love so much. I ran on this platform of protecting what we love and this beautiful ideal of democracy, but that that the attacks on it were clearly because they didn't like what democracy was doing, right? Democracy was electing people of color. It was electing those who wanted to address issues. It was electing our first vice president woman of color. And I think that the way you support us is by doing it again, right? The way we support each other in this is doing everything we can to strengthen our democracy, doing everything we can to mobilize that all of those efforts to try to put down our vote and to restrict our vote, that we fight back against them. And I remember when they were trying to suppress the Native American vote in the Dakotas, and they said, we lost the legal battle, but they showed up anyway. So we're going to right? That's what we do. That's how we support each other, is fighting back, registering, voting, organizing, being active, bringing our joy and energy to this effort to save our future.
Yes. And you all went through that awful afternoon, and you came just right back to work that evening to do the work of the American people. And for me, that was just the epitome of servant leadership, which is why it's just so great to have women like you in Congress. So next question is, what's one of the key things that you have learned so far when you walk into this big governing institution?
Well, one of the key things that you hear a lot but it's about relationships. And really, us women, we're great on relationships with. It's about collaborations. It's about working together. And one of the things that I've truly enjoyed is that there is such generosity between my colleagues in the Democratic caucus, right? Because of what happened on January 6th, there's a little difficulty about reaching across the aisle because of the number of votes that people who stood up on the floor after that and said their speeches. But what I always say is that time is one of our most precious gifts. And as women, we multitask, even though there's no such thing as multitasking. We just get a lot done because we have to.
Yes, we do.
And time is the most precious thing we have, and it is given as a gift by my colleagues so often. So that's one of the key things that I've learned is the importance of being generous with each other on time, on advice, on guidance, on mentoring, and that's one of the things I'm truly appreciating about Congress.
So earlier we were talking, and you were super excited because you're about to get a visit from the second gentleman to one of the health centers that you helped open. And we do know that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted our tribal communities. And you said on the House floor, Native Americans are 4 times more likely to be hospitalized and twice as likely to die from COVID-19 than white Americans. So how has our government, particularly the previous administration, really failed our tribal communities, our indigenous communities? And what's one thing that we should be doing during this time when it comes to the pandemic and supporting our indigenous sisters and brothers?
So the failures that have led to the death and despair in Indian country is really decades and centuries in the making, right? But we have failed to live up to our trust obligations to Native Americans. We said, as a government, we entered into all these treaties where we took all of their land, so much of their land, and we made different promises for different things. And we promised as the United States to provide healthcare, to provide education. And it's called the trust responsibility. Trust us, the United States government said, and we have failed in that trust responsibility. We failed to provide full funding for IHS, the Indian Health Service. We fund the Indian Health Service at the lowest rate of any health funding in this country. We fund it at lower than the VA, at lower than what we provide funding for health services in prisons. We should provide full funding across the board for everybody, but that's one of the things that I'm going to really work hard on, because I'm, as the chair of the Committee on Indigenous Peoples, I'm going to want us to start fully funding the BIA, fully funding the Bureau of Indian Education, fully funding the Indian Health Service, and then saying, but you know what? We know that Native American tribes can do a better job at running these programs than we can. And there's something called self-determination. Isn't that a beautiful word? We all want self-determination, to be able to realize who we can be. And so that I'm going to hope that there is a whole lot more self-determination going on, so that we have more places like this health clinic that I, helped fund, helped start, where they run it themselves, self-determination. It is like, I want all of America to have the kind of health care services they have at the Kiowa Health Clinic. But those are the things that we need to do, is fully fund that. And in the meantime, I think be very aware of the many ways in which our culture puts down Native Americans, and be very supportive of things like Deb Haaland becoming the next Secretary of the Interior and celebrating those wins.
Yes, and we're definitely going to celebrate the win with Deb Haaland. And you two have a great relationship. She's been a mentor to you. So I got to ask, what is one great piece of advice that the future cabinet secretary, I just love saying that so much. I'm just so happy for Deb. What is one piece of advice the future cabinet secretary has given to you?
Well, she's given me so much advice, so it's always
She drops gems. She drops so many gems.
She is great. But let me tell you, we have a secret weapon, and that is that I am going to take New Mexico red and green chili back to DC and cook for my colleagues and cook for everybody else, because New Mexicans know, Native Americans know, Latinos know, Chicanos know, we love cooking, and the conversations you have around some good food leads to lasting relationships and collaboration.
That's true. That is so true. Oh, I love it. So excited for Deb. So one of the things that you talked about when you were campaigning, and this goes back to our lived experiences, is being a breast cancer survivor. And how does that approach your work in Congress, especially when we know there's just so much talk about women's health care, and you have been impacted by one of the biggest healthcare issues that a lot of women deal with, breast cancer?
Right. I had breast cancer. I've also had near-death experiences related to maternal health, and we know that women of color die from maternal morbidity more than others. And so what I have is the ability to talk about that, willingness to talk about, what's it like to almost die when you're trying to give birth, and what's it like to have cancer and be bald, right, and be weak, and be terrified, and deal with all of those insurance forms. And so what I have coming out of it is really empathy, and it's empathy born of experience. And it's born of experience that's not just what happens to us individually. It's not just our own baldness or weakness and reliance on friends, but the fact that we don't spend enough time addressing unique health concerns of women. I lost both my mother and my sister to lung cancer, which it turns out that non-smoker women, Latinas, Asian women, are more likely to develop a certain kind of adenocarcinoma of the lung, but we don't send the alarm bells out about it, so it doesn't get diagnosed till it's stage 4, and you lose those you love. So then the question is, what do you do with that vulnerability? What do you do with that pain? And I think what's important is that we each grab that pain, that vulnerability, that touching into who we are as humans and as connected to humans, to our beloved community, and that we use it to build our policies. I like to say that from these places of pain that I've had, that's what helps ground me, in a sense of building policies from a place of love. Like, right, what if we actually built all of our policies from a place of loving our sisters, of loving our communities, of loving our weakness, of loving the vulnerabilities we have, and saying, out of that place of love, I want to address those vulnerabilities. I want to create the opportunities we each need and deserve from that place of love that comes out of, I think, trauma. It comes out of, you can do different things with it. And what I want to do with it is build empathy and build policies that are rooted in that sense of vulnerability, and then all the love you get to make yourself strong.
And we have seen so many moms elected to Congress, which is fabulous, especially women who have young children. And you're a mom, and just something we hear all the time for women is, but I have children. I don't think it's the right time for me to run. It's too much. So next question is, what advice do you have for the moms out there that are thinking about running for office, but maybe too intimidated to take that step forward to do it?
Don't be scared, but also make your own decisions. The great thing we know about women now is we can make decisions about when is the right time for us to run, right? We have to recognize people like Nikema Williams, our wonderful former, just democracy hero, right? Like, I love it when she talks, her little 5-year-old climbs on her lap and she talks about, well, yes, he's starting kindergarten. And, some of our policies are based from that. Linda Sanchez gave birth. Well, she was a congresswoman, right? And I myself ended up running for office when my children were older, and when they could really be very actively engaged in my campaign. They were in all of my parades, and they were introducing me at events, and now they're they watch C-SPAN now, really. Teenagers, young adults watch C-SPAN. So the message is, run when it's best for you. Listen to yourself, listen to your families, and then reach out and get the help, because there are so many amazing organizations out there willing to work with you so that you can take your why. Our wonderful woman speaker always says, what's your why?
Why? Yeah.
What's your why? Emerge will help you hone the statement about what's your why. You know that, right?
Yeah. It's central. It's so key. That why. And I tell especially young women this, I'm like, it's your why if you want to run for office. It's your why if you want to be a campaign staffer. It's your why if you want to get engaged in activism. And especially when you're running for office, there's going to be those hard days, and you got to keep that why close to your heart, because it's what's going to keep you going. I love that you said that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, and Emerge will help you be able to touch in and be able to both articulate that why in the minute or the 3 minutes. Poder is an organization which is Latinas supporting Latinas running for Congress, Latino Victory Fund, Emily's List. There's so many resources that now exist because there is such a strong recognition. I have a PAC called Aura PAC, right? That's going to be focused on women of color running for office. So if people want to support me in that, we just have a lot of things that so many people are going to be looking to do because we know those voices are key.
I love it. And the fact that you already have a PAC shows why you're amazing. You are already reaching back to help lift up other women. So thank you for starting your PAC. The more PACs that we have supporting women candidates, women of color candidates, the better. And I want to go on to our next question, because this is ELLE. So, we got to talk a little bit of fashion. So at ELLE, we know that fashion can be an essential tool for communication. So we have seen this so much, especially with the newer women in Congress. You all have really communicated well through fashion. But in particular, you have this red floral scarf that you're often wearing. Can you tell us if there's a story behind it?
Don't we always have stories behind most of this stuff? We like it. So I purchased that scarf in Peru when my twins, they graduated from college. We did this 4-day hike through the Andes and the glaciers. We were up at 21,000 feet with the glaciers up at 24,000 feet above us. No, we were lower than that. But my kids are half Peruvian, and I was visiting, I'm no longer married to their dad, but I was visiting my relatives in love, because even though we're not relatives in law anymore, we love each other. And so I wear it. It keeps me warm. It gives me good memories. It just is, it's something that is it's fun to wear, and it has that, has a lot of love in it and a lot of stories of those wonderful weeks, spending time with my kids, and my kids at the country, right? They're half Peruvian.
I love it. That is on my bucket list, Peru. So I loved hearing you talk about that. And we know we just entered the second year of the pandemic. So 2020 was quite stressful. 2021, obviously, still really stressful. What are some of your coping mechanisms for stress and just self-care?
Well, mine is really about Mother Earth, right? I live in this beautiful place I get to call home, New Mexico, northern New Mexico. And so a lot of my self-care is going out and, walking in her forests and, playing in her, alongside her water, kayaking in the summertime, going up in the mountains and skiing or hiking, and just, breathing in the beauty of Mother Earth. And sometimes you can do it where you don't have to actually leave your, your four walls of your home. Sometimes I'll just look out the window and I'll see how the sun is striking, some leaves, and it's just reflecting back beautifully. So I think a key thing is learning how to find awe and joy in things big and small, so that for that moment, you can see the beauty in something small. So nature is my big thing, and finding the beauty in small things. And listen, I've got this great new job. So I'm kind of lucky because I got this new job that keeps a lot of my focus. But we all are, as humans, we love our connections with each other. We love our community. And so, I'm wishing for each of us that time when we get to go and, hug somebody you haven't been able to hug yet. And so that's why for everybody, get the vaccine, whichever vaccine is available, take it. They're all good. And we need to get each other, we need to look out for each other and try to get as many people vaccinated as possible so we can hug each other again.
Yes, I've been just getting so emotional at watching strangers' photos of the grandparents hugging the grandkids, and I'm so excited that we're getting to that time. And before we go to our rapid fire round, one more question. You're a history maker. We've talked about Deb Haaland, who's also a history maker, but who's an additional history making politician that you look up to?
Dolores Huerta.
Yes. Queen Dolores. Oh.
Sí se puede. That came out of, she's the co-founder of the United Farm Worker Union. And she did the Si se puede because they were planning an action and somebody said, oh, we can't do that. One of the other guys around her. And she said, si se puede, right? And so from that was that wonderful call to action of, yes, we can. And I love the fact that she has been dedicated to organizing and activism for so many decades. It still shines bright. One of my favorite sayings of hers was, I was listening to her being interviewed on Latino USA, and at the end Maria said, oh, dame un poquito un consejo, give me a little pearl of wisdom that you might. I always ask this at the end, and Dolores says, make sure you dance a lot when you're young so that you have the energy to march a lot when you're old. And she is 90. Yeah. And 2 years ago, she was marching at our Cesar Chavez parade, and she is still active and going. And so let's all have that joy of organizing and activism, for your entire life.
I mean, she definitely still marches. The first time I had the honor of meeting her, I worked for the cabinet secretary, Hilda Solis, at the Department of Labor. And we were down in Selma marching, and she was there like marching away. And me, I'm like, whew, I'm tired. She's just going. I'm like, all right, Shanti, you got to start taking your vitamins, whatever Miss Huerta has, like you need to be doing it too. All right, we're going to go into our rapid fire round. Okay. What's one day in Congress you wish you could go back and do over?
the day we passed the American Rescue Plan after it came back from the Senate, because I want to do that over and over again, a long list of bills coming over from the Senate so we can get them into law.
Love it. What's your guilty pleasure TV show to binge watch?
Jane the Virgin, because the umbrella, the telenovelas, the great dresses. I mean, really.
Right. What's your go-to quarantine cocktail or mocktail?
Democracias, which is a combination of pisco sour meets blood orange meets a margarita. And it was invented by my son to celebrate a voting rights case we won here in the Supreme Court. And it is delicious anytime. And since it is a voting rights cocktail, when HR 1 passes and becomes law, democracias for everybody.
Love it. So I know for me, my spending became a lot during quarantine. So what's one of the most embarrassing things that you've bought during quarantine?
Well, I bought a bunch of clothes online that actually look awful in person. And so it was like such a, and then I forgot to send them back. And I was like, oh my God. And it just reminds me, I love buying local in my consignment shops, in my local, women-owned dress shops. So it just reminded me, no, Teresa, you need to stay local.
If you had to quarantine with one person from the 117th Congress, who would it be?
Well, it actually would be the speaker because one, think of all the stories that she has, right? If anybody has read Pelosi, I mean, she's got stories of battles going back decades. She has a joy about her, which is really wonderful. And she also clearly likes good food. So it would be good food, good stories. And she's a great dresser too, since we're on ELLE.
Yes, she is. Like, the day she came out of the White House in that red coat, I was like, yes. And I'm like, where can I get those sunglasses? I need those in my life. They were so good.
They were great.
You've talked a lot about the importance of collaboration. What's your best advice for working with people you don't agree with?
I think that what we need to do sometimes is focus on the solution. Like, what are we actually trying to get done, rather than focusing on the problem? Because we might have different reasons for what the problem is. Like, I want to blame this and he wants to blame that or whatever, right? But if we focus sometimes on the solution, like, look, let's try to do this. We might have different reasons for trying to get, more money in rural development, right? But it's that focusing on the solution rather than trying to get your point across of why did we get to this problem in the first place.
Yes, such good advice. All right. What's the most outrageous thing someone has said to you in Congress?
So one of the most outrageous things was during the markup of the American Rescue Plan, that it's all right for immigrants, to pick this person's crops in his district, but we need to respect them, and we don't need to make sure that they're protected during the pandemic from COVID and from other matters. That, to me, was outrageous. The idea that we will take your labor, but we won't give you any of our respect or any of the protections that the entire community needs.
That is outrageous. I'm going to move on because I know there are some things I want to say to that. What's one book everyone should read during quarantine?
I loved The Overstory by Richard Powers. I think it's, because we need to take care of nature. So.
Yes. What are you most looking forward to doing once the pandemic is over?
Dancing under the stars. Santa Fe has great music every night of the week in the summer, and I need to dance a lot so I can be marching with Dolores Huerta when I'm 90.
All right. You talked about the red and the green chilies, but red or green chilies, which one are you going to go with?
Christmas. So everybody knows New Mexico is the only state that has an official state question, and it's red or green. What kind of chili do you want to eat?
Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez, it has been so wonderful talking to you. Thank you to you. Thank you to everyone who joined us for this special Women's History Month edition of 20 Questions with ELLE Magazine. And I'm Ashanti Golar, the founder of the Brown Girls Guide to Politics. It's been my honor to host this conversation. And I hope everyone has a great day. And we hope that you will stay tuned because we will be doing more of these conversations throughout the rest of the month. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.